Okina from 9 to the 15th of March, 1945, which led to the establishment of 3 Japanese puppet states. Here the Japanese command reasoned that only decisive destruction of United States Pacific Fleet and conquest of its remote outposts would ensure that the Japanese Empire would not be overwhelmed by America's industrial might. In April 1942, Japan was bombed for the first time in the Doolittle Raid. During the same month, after the Japanese victory in the Battle of Bataan, the Bataan Death March was conducted, where 5,650 to 18,000 Filipinos died under the rule of the Imperial Army. 86. In May 1942, failure to decisively defeat the Allies at the Battle of the Coral Sea, in spite of Japanese numerical superiority, equated to a strategic defeat for the Japanese. This setback was followed in June 1942 by the catastrophic loss of 4 fleet carriers at the Battle of Midway, the first decisive defeat for the Imperial Japanese Navy. It proved to be the turning point of the war, as the Navy lost its offensive strategic capability and never managed to construct the critical mass of both large numbers of carriers and well-trained air groups. 87. Australian land forces defeated Japanese Marines in New Guinea at the Battle of Milne Bay in September 1942, which was the first land defeat suffered by the Japanese in the Pacific. Further victories by the Allies at Guadalcanal in September 1942 and New Guinea in 1943 put the Empire of Japan on the defensive for the remainder of the war, with Guadalcanal in particular sapping their already limited oil supplies. 85. During 1943 and 1944, Allied forces, backed by the industrial might and vast raw material resources of the United States, advanced steadily towards Japan. The 6th United States Army, led by General MacArthur, landed on Lit on the 20th of October, 1944. The Palawan Massacre was committed by the Imperial Army against Filipinos in December 1944. 88. In the subsequent months, during the Philippines Campaign, 1944-45, the Allies, including the combined United States forces together with the native guerrilla units, recaptured the Philippines. Surrender. By 1944, the Allies had seized or bypassed and neutralized many of Japan's strategic bases through amphibious landings and bombardment. This, coupled with the losses inflicted by Allied submarines on Japanese shipping routes, began to strangle Japan's economy and undermine its ability to supply its army. By early 1945, the U.S. Marines had wrested control of the Ogasawara Islands in several hard-fought battles, such as Battle of Iwo Jima, marking the beginning of the fall of the islands of Japan. After securing airfields in Saipan and Guam in the summer of 1944, the United States Army Air Forces conducted an intense strategic bombing campaign by having B-29 Superfortress bombers in nighttime low-altitude incendiary raids burning Japanese cities in an effort to pulverize Japan's war industry and shatter its morale. The Operation Meeting House raid on Tokyo on the night of the 9th of March, 2010, 1945, led to the deaths of approximately 120,000. Victorious Japanese troops marching through the city center of Singapore following the city's capture in February 1942. Imperial Japanese Army paratroopers landing during the Battle of Palembang, February 13, 1942, a model representing the attack by dive bombers from USS Yorktown and USS Enterprise on the Japanese aircraft carriers SRY Kijai and Kiga in the morning of June 4, 1942. During the Battle of Midway, group of Type 2 Kame tanks on board a second-class transporter of the Imperial Japanese Navy, 1944. 1945, the rebuilt battlecruiser Harana sank at her moorings in the naval base of Kure on the 24th of July during a series of bombings. Civilians. Approximately 350,500 civilians died in 67 Japanese cities as a result of the incendiary bombing campaign on Japan. Concurrent with these attacks, Japan's vital coastal shipping operations were severely hampered with extensive aerial mining, thus Operation Starvation. Regardless, these efforts did not succeed in persuading the Japanese military to surrender. In mid-August 1945, the United States dropped nuclear weapons on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These bombings were the first and only combat use of nuclear weaponry. These two bombs killed approximately 120,000 people in a matter of seconds and as many as a result of nuclear radiation in the following weeks, months and years. The bombs killed as many as 140,000 people in Hiroshima and 80,000 in Nagasaki by the end of 1945. At the Yalta Agreement, the US, the UK, and the USSR agreed that the USSR would enter the war on Japan within 3 months of the defeat of Germany in Europe. This Soviet-Japanese war led to the fall of Japan's Manchurian occupation, Soviet occupation of South Sakhalin Island, and a real imminent threat of Soviet invasion of the home islands of Japan. This was a significant factor for some internal parties in the Japanese decision to surrender to the US, 89, and gain some protection, rather than face a simultaneous Soviet invasion as well as defeat both US and its allies. Likewise, the superior numbers of the armies of the Soviet Union in Europe weighs a factor in the US decision to demonstrate the use of atomic weapons to the USSR, just as the Allied victory in Europe was evolving into the division of Germany and Berlin, their division of Europe with the Iron Curtain and the subsequent Cold War. The Japanese archipelago and the Korean peninsula in 1945. National Geographic, having ignored Mokusatsu, the Potsdam Declaration, the Empire of Japan surrendered and ended World War II after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the declaration of war by the Soviet Union and subsequent invasion of Manchuria and other territories. In a national radio address on the 15th of August, Emperor Hirohito announced the surrender to the Japanese people by Gyokunaches. End of the Empire of Japan. Occupation of Japan. A drawing depicting a speech in the Imperial Japanese Diet on November 1, 1945, following the end of the Second World War. In the foreground are several Allied soldiers watching proceedings from the back of the balcony. A period known as Occupied Japan followed after the war, largely spearheaded by U.S. Army General Douglas MacArthur to revise the Japanese constitution and demilitarize the nation. The Allied occupation, including concurrent economic and political assistance, continued until 1952. Allied forces ordered Japan to abolish the Meiji Constitution and enforce the 1947 Constitution of Japan. This new constitution was imposed by the United States under the supervision of MacArthur. MacArthur included Article 9, which changed Japan into a pacifist country. 90. Upon adoption of the 1947 Constitution, the Empire of Japan dissolved and became simply the State of Japan, and all the territories such as Taiwan, Korea, Karafuto, and Kwantung were lost. Japan was reduced to the territories that were traditional within the Japanese cultural sphere pre-1895. The four main islands, Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku, the Ryukyu Islands and the Nan Islands. The Kuril Islands also historically belonged to Japan, 91, and were first inhabited by the Ainu people before coming under the control of the Matsume clan during the Edo period. 92. However, the Kuril Islands were not included due to a dispute with the Soviet Union. 8. Japan adopted a parliamentary-based political system, and the role of the emperor became symbolic. The U.S. occupation forces were fully responsible for protecting Japan from external threats. Japan only had a meager police force for domestic security. Japan was under the sole control of the United States. This was only time in Japanese history that it was occupied by a foreign power. 93. General MacArthur later commended the new Japanese government that he helped establish and the new Japanese period when he was about to send the American forces to the Korean War. The Japanese people, since the war, have undergone the greatest reformation recorded in modern history. With a commendable will, eagerness to learn, and marked capacity to understand, they have, from the ashes left in war's wake, erected in Japan an edifice dedicated to the supremacy of individual liberty and personal dignity, and in the ensuing process there has been created a truly representative government committed to the advance of political morality, freedom of economic enterprise, and social justice. Politically, economically, and socially Japan is now abreast of many free nations of the earth and will not again fail for universal trust. I sent all 4 of our occupation divisions to the Korean battlefront without the slightest qualms as to the effect of the resulting power vacuum upon Japan. The results fully justified my faith. I know of no nation more serene, orderly, and industrious, nor in which higher hopes can be entertained for future constructive service in the advance of the human race. For historian John W. Dower, in retrospect, apart from the military officer corps, the purge of alleged militarists and ultranationalists that was conducted under the occupation had relatively small impact on the long-term composition of men of influence in the public and private sectors. The purge initially brought new blood into the political parties, but this was offset by the return of huge numbers of formerly purged conservative politicians to national as well as local politics in the early 1950s. In the bureaucracy, the purge was negligible from the outset. In the economic sector the purge similarly was only mildly disruptive, affecting less than 1,600 individuals spread among some 400 companies. Everywhere one looks, the corridors of power in post-war Japan are crowded with men whose talents had already been recognized during the years, and who found the same talents highly prized in the new Japan. 94. Influential personnel. Political. In the administration of Japan dominated by the military political movement during World War II, the civil central government was under the management of military men and their right-wing civilian allies, along with members of the nobility and imperial family. The emperor was in the center of this power structure as supreme commander-in-chief of the imperial armed forces and head of state. Early period HIH Prince Kitashirakawa Yoshihisa, HIH Prince Kitashirakawa Naruhisa, HIH Prince Komatsuaki Ito, HIH Marquis Michitsuun Koga, Prince Yamagata Aritomo, Prince Hirogumi, Prince Katsurata, World War II Prince Fuminro Kono, Kihirata, Hideki Tojo, Prince Hirogumi, Prince Hirogumi, His Imperial Highness Prince Kitashirakawa Naruhisa, the third head of a collateral branch of the Japanese imperial family. His Imperial Highness Prince Kitashirakawa Naruhisa, the third head of a collateral branch of the Japanese imperial family. His Imperial Highness Marquis Michitsuun Koga, a member of the imperial family, descending from Emperor Murakami. He was the former governor of Tokyo Prefecture. His Imperial Highness Marquis Michitsuun Koga, a member of the imperial family descending from Emperor Murakami. He was the former governor of Tokyo Prefecture. His Imperial Highness Count Nagoshi Ogasawara, a member of the imperial family. His Imperial Highness Count Nagoshi Ogasawara, a member of the imperial family. Diplomats. Early period Marquis Komura Jita, Boxer Protocol and the Treaty of Portsmouth. Count Matsumu Mimitsu, Treaty of Shimonoseki. Count Hayashi Tadasu, Anglo-Japanese Alliance. Count Kaneko Kenta, Envoy to the United States. Viscount Aoki Shz, Foreign Minister of Japan, Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Commerce and Navigation. Viscount Toru Tadafumi, Vice Consul to the Kingdom of Hawaii. Viscount Ishii Kaikujiro, Nansing Ishii Agreement. World War II Baron Hiroshi Shima, Japanese Ambassador to Nazi Germany. Military.